You good?
Yep. All right. I'll pull up my notes. You good? You good?
Yes.
All right.
Are you going to ask me that 100 times while we're recording?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just going to, in the middle of the conversation, I'm just going to ask you if you're good.
You know, my favorite part of Yakuza 0 is, are you all right? You okay?
You okay right now?
You all right?
Welcome to the Good Games Podcast. My name is James, and in for Leo is the wonderful Zac Romero.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
an honor.
I'm so happy you could help us fill in. No John on this episode either. He has not played any of the Yakuza games, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And you are a Yakuza expert, Zac.
I wouldn't say expert, but I would say certainly major fanboy. And I'm almost disappointed we didn't have John in on this, just to really kind of throw it to him, having no clue what the hell we're talking about.
Right.
Like, just be like, oh, what do you think of Majima's plight as a character in the series? And just have him be like, I don't know what it
That's
is.
my favorite part of having John as a host. Is
Right,
his,
just to throw it to him.
Mm-hmm.
Just throw him in the deep end. That's basically the element of the show.
Exactly, yeah.
Toss John in the deep end.
That's his role on the cast. Just throw John in the deep end.
But yeah, so we're talking about Yakuza 0 more specifically.
Specifically Yakuza 0, but I figured we could talk about a little bit about the entire series and how, because I feel like Yakuza 0 is not only, for people who have not played this series, it's not only the best place to start, but I'd argue the best game in the series?
Now, it's interesting that you bring that up because
Okay.
I agree, first of all, let me say that. Secondly, I wanted to try to relate this to film in some way.
Okay.
I don't know if there's really an example of this, where like the prequel, because Yakuza 0 was originally released in 2015 in Japan,
Right.
2017 worldwide,
Right.
and is the precursor to a series of games that has been going on for over a decade. So they start basically from scratch, go with this prequel to introduce new fans to the series and kind of be a good introduction point.
Mm-hmm.
And as you pointed out, it may in fact be the best game in the series. And so, as buck wild as it sounds, that would be as though when Phantom Menace came out, it was hands down the greatest Star Wars movie that was ever made in the series.
Right,
That's
right.
what we're talking about here in terms of mind-boggling. Like, wait. The prequel is the best game? Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, they had a lot of hindsight there. They had a lot of ability to be like, well, here's all the best parts of the later entries, which were arguably our best.
Right.
So now we've polished it, and now it's the best it's going to get.
Bring him back, introduce the characters, but while we're introducing the characters, let's sprinkle in some of the stuff we know the fans love from the later games.
Exactly.
Now, to further extend your film analogy, the tone of this game is something I've had trouble locking in because it's all over the place. Now,
So I've put some thought into this as well.
Yeah,
if
yeah,
I was going
yeah.
to explain this game to someone, the Yakuza series in general,
for people who haven't played it,
if I was going to explain it, especially with 0, because 0 takes place in the late 80s,
right?
I would say picture in your mind Grand Theft Auto Vice City, the
Good.
size and scale of that game.
Mm-hmm.
And the main story is the film Scarface.
Yes, yeah.
However, the twist is that any mini game involved in it is Mario Party.
Right.
That is really the best way to describe this, I think.
I described it a couple of weeks ago. We were talking, I think, to one of our other friends who has not played this game. I described it as if the Shawshank Redemption and the Fast and the Furious were all one movie. It's the same movie.
Right.
Like, there's no...
And it's still 2.5 hours long. It's still a regular movie,
Yeah,
but it's both those movies. That's a great way to put it.
That's what the tone of this game feels like. But it nails the, like, super duper, like, ultra dramatic, serious parts, as well as the, like, goofy bullshit. But, like, nothing feels dissonant there. Like,
That's true. That, I think, is the magic. Because
the magic is there's, like, these wild extremes in tone that somehow work.
Well, because they say in filmmaking, you know, that's where comic relief comes from. It's like if you've been building tension in a story for long enough, people eventually need a break.
Right.
They need something to kind of cut the tension a little bit so that... Because you get... minimum returns, basically. You get diminished returns when you're just building tension. Eventually, your audience is just going to get worn out. So I feel like Yakuza 0 kind of does that in terms of like, well, our main plot is going to be very, very serious. But if you need your own comic relief, you can take a break at any point and go goof around with like other wacky stuff that we've come up with. But like you said, the fact that it does still work and feel balanced, and I think partially that's because of your main character, Kiryu. Mm-hmm. Because Kiryu is so deadly serious in every regard. Even if he's doing something goofy, he's still completely serious. Yes. I feel like that's your connecting factor.
Kiryu is not aware of the extremes in tone.
True. It is all the exact same.
He treats everything with the same amount of seriousness and like whatever.
And conviction and just down the middle.
He treats minigames like one of my favorites, the pocket racing minigame. He treats losing in that the same way he treats like losing a fight to one of the Yakuza rivals or something like that. It's the same expression, it's the same emotion that he has,
And I guess that's probably the connecting factor. It's just the fact that even if the situation itself, because everybody always talks about the karaoke minigame in this game, which is basically just a regular rhythm game, like Guitar Man or Rock Band or any of those games. But as you're hitting the buttons in the rhythmic order to try to get the highest score. Meanwhile, the background of the game is the most buck wild visuals of Kiryu singing his heart out, and kind of like a music video almost starts. Yeah. And I think that really kind of encompasses it. It's such a goofy premise, but he is so committed to it that you're like, no, it's just as serious as the political intrigue and death and climbing the ladder and blah 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 of the actual story.
This ultra serious Yakuza, like, organized crime member is also singing karaoke and treating it with the same amount of seriousness that he would a Yakuza meeting.
And I think it nails it better than, like, the GTA games do.
Oh, yeah. I've always had a problem with the tone in GTA. Like, even
regardless, even Vice City, which was a much more neon-colored and a lot more, like, lighthearted, I guess you could say, take on GTA, everyone still said the same thing. You just played long enough to unlock everything, like unlock the town, unlock some weapons, and then you just had to hell with the storyline, and you just goofed around and did what you wanted. The Yakuza 0 does not fall into that same trap. Like, in terms of, you can goof around and stuff like that, but the story is a really well told story on its own, and also it's a very, very fun game to play.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the specifics of the game. So basically, Yakuza 0 introduces you to a lot of characters that play a large part in the series, and introduces you into the cities that all the games take place in, and just sort of the world that the story encompasses. So let's talk a little bit about like characters that happen to jump out at you. So we get to obviously meet Kiryu. We obviously get to meet Majima, and get their kind of backstories.
And like Majima, for longtime fans, is kind of known as like Kiryu's rival. He's just obsessed with fighting Kiryu. But in this game, you're playing as Majima. So and it really delves into what makes Majima tick.
It gives him a lot more depth as a character.
Yeah.
And so he's in charge of this kind of like... you get to really see another side of this world that they build through Majima, because Kiryu is always sort of an outsider. Even in the, Yakuza hierarchy, he's always either trying to get out, or he's like, well, I don't really do the same things. Like, I don't really kill people. I'm kind of an outsider in that series.
And it's so funny, because it seems like those two things are fundamentally at odds, because Kiryu is a person with, like, a really, really strict moral code that he holds above everything else, but he's also a member of organized crime.
Yeah.
And a lot of the game is Kiryu trying to resolve his moral code against, like, whatever the Yakuza are telling him to do.
Right. Whether it be, whatever seedy kind of business they're involved in. And I think the game gets around that in terms of... Kiryu is Superman. He's the strongest person that's ever lived.
Yeah.
So, like, when you go, well, why would the organized family even keep him around if he's going to be a wet blanket and not want to participate in drug dealing and stuff? It's like, because he could kick anybody's ass, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
Oh, all right. Well, I guess that's why they would keep him around. But then Majima, you get to see like kind of the real underbelly of Japan in this time, this fictional Japan. because he's part of the cabaret clubs. He's basically like a nightclub general manager, and so you get to see like the kind of crazy characters involved in that as well, which is interesting because, like you said, Kiryu is such on a moral high ground. You don't necessarily see the real dark depths of that sort of like living fast crime kind of, lifestyle choice, whereas Majima is just is neck deep in it, basically.
That's interesting. You're right, though. They use Majima to explore the seedier side of the Yakuza.
Because you never get there, because Kiryu doesn't judge anybody and tries to keep his hands as clean as he can, so you're never really going to come across these same sort of characters in any more than just like, oh, it's a boss, like go fight them. So I was thinking about some of the things that are maybe some criticisms that people have of this game.
Okay,
that's
fair.
Zero,
because as anyone listening to this can tell, you and I are pretty big fans of this game, but I think it's fair to be a little bit critical of Yakuza 0.
So
good as it is.
I've heard criticisms about the not necessarily like the leveling up process necessarily, but like the skill tree sort of system and things like that. That it's a little confusing. But I've now played 0, Kiwami 1, and Kiwami 2. The leveling up systems are all basically in the same. They're all sort of adjacent to each other. None of them are just as straightforward as I think some people want in a game. But that takes me to a point that I've always made about like Dead Rising. I am open to play a game how it wants to be played.
Okay.
I'm not one to throw a fit necessarily if it's like, well, this game has like this kind of interface, or this game has this kind of mechanic to it. I feel like there is a demographic of people that are like, well, I want the game to play like this, and if it doesn't, then it's a bad game. Because like with Dead Rising, big complaint was, well, I hate this whole like keeping time mechanic. This is stupid. Well, no, it's trying to add tension, and that's how the game wants to be played. So same thing with like the skill trees. It's like once you kind of figure it out, you're like, oh, okay, so I'm trying to better myself through this. Okay, fine.
I think a lot of what I think some people could find jarring about Yakuza 0 and the Yakuza games in general
is Mr. Libido.
is Mr. Libido, but also how much of the game is just reading dialogue, listening to characters, watching cutscenes. It's as much of an interactive movie as it is a video game. I think a lot of that, and that's also a lot of the strength of that game is how it develops character. I think how it develops characters through the cutscenes, through the dialogue, through.
True.
I don't, and you can disagree with me if you want. I don't think the strength of Yakuza 0 or any of the Yakuza games is the gameplay. I think it's the storytelling and the character development.
That's an interesting take. Well, I was just going to say, your point about it being like an interactive movie, I remember when Metal Gear Solid 5 came out,
right?
That was a huge criticism against it. Was like, this is just a movie that I'm having to hit like,
MGS4, right?
Or 4, you're right.
Yeah.
That I have to hit like QuickTime events for.
Yep.
Like, this is garbage. And I feel like the solution would have been give Snake goofy minigames to play, and then no one's going to complain about that.
Or just like make sure your cutscenes are like really gripping, because they are in Yakuza 0.
No, when a motherfucker has to cut off his finger
Yeah.
because he's brought shame to the family, that's like, whoa, that is a very tense scene. That,
all of those cutscenes, there was not a single cutscene in that game where I was like, all right, come on.
I'm going to go get a sandwich or something.
Yeah. No. Like every cutscene had me fucking by the balls.
Yeah.
I was into all of them.
I would say another criticism is the game is very hand-holdy at the beginning. Like,
Okay.
I remember Luna was watching me play it, and
Your wife.
yes, and she was super bent out of shape for the first like 2 chapters because she's like, it's so linear and it does not give you any room to move. It's just you're doing exactly what it's telling you to do in the order that it tells you to do it, and that's it. And she was very turned off from the whole experience until you do get far enough in that it's like, okay, now just do whatever you want. And then she was completely enthralled.
Now I know one of her favorite things about Yakuza 0 was the Cabaret Club minigame.
Right.
Do you want to talk about...
Well, I was going to save that for our
Okay.
breakdown segment,
That's fair.
but we can do sort of a quick run of just sort of, I think we could just do highlights of the game, things that we love.
A lot of Yakuza 0 is minigames.
True.
So it's a big open world city, Kamurocho, where the game's setting is. And there's just side quests and minigames all over the city. And I think the side quests and minigames are also one of the best parts of Yakuza.
I would agree with that.
Because you'll just be wandering around and a character will approach you and just... You'll immediately be transported into some bizarre premise.
Imagine Final Fantasy VII, but instead of the random encounters,
Yeah.
instead it's like, hey, I lost my dog, and I'm also married to my dog, and I need you to legally, and I need you to find him for me, or else we're gonna have to get a divorce. So you're like, what? Like that's.
I am a statue. I am a human statue, and I have to pee really bad, but it'll break the illusion of me being a statue if I pee.
As an artist, I can't break that illusion.
I need you to distract the masses of people by being a fucking dumbass goofball.
Right.
Well, I sneak off to pee. Can you do this for me?
Can you sing a cappella when you are super serious and a known assassin to distract these people long enough so I can go take a leak?
Yeah, these are all side quests in Yakuza 0.
Or the guy with the really kick-ass jacket who can't make it across a bridge because he keeps getting beat up and you have to be his bodyguard. Or
the time when Kiryu helped Michael Jackson and Steven Spielberg film Thriller.
yeah, and who had to defend him from zombies coming down the alleyway.
Yep. All
Or Mr. Libido. We
Yeah,
mentioned
you brought
him.
up Mr. Libido. What the fuck is Mr. Libido?
I don't really know, to be perfectly honest with you, and I've played the game. Yeah, at a certain point, you just see this weird, older, gyrating man in like a baby's diaper. Who's just the town perv, I guess.
Yep.
And he just keeps showing up, and you have to share like sexy nudie cards that you find on the street, and it's a very odd thing. But I love that even like Kiryu in the game is like, oh, that old guy is really throwing his dick around a lot. That's very upsetting to look at. Like even like the game itself is like, wow, I don't know why we put that in. Sorry, that's real weird. What about Mr. Shakedown?
Ooh, yeah. Here's my strategy with Mr. Shakedown. I never fought him ever. Every time I saw him, I ran down the opposite street.
I found that very interesting as a way to, again, build tension. Is the game tells you don't fight him. You're gonna be outmatched.
Yeah. By the way, what is Mr. Shakedown?
So Mr. Shakedown, right when you first enter the game warns you that there's like this huge brute in a suit that just kind of like walks around the city, and if he runs into you and can catch up to you, he'll fight you, and if he beats you, he takes like half your money.
Yep.
Now that sounds like kind of a BS like mechanic to keep like the capitalism and the economy of the game in place.
Yeah.
But you really don't run into him as much as you think.
Right.
However, is he not just the same as Mr. X from Resident Evil 2?
Yeah, basically.
Then you're just kind of, you see him on the map and you're like, oh no, and you run away, and it adds tension.
He doesn't actually like chase you. He's not. If he sees you, he'll follow you, but he's usually like really slow. It's easy to juke him out or outrun him or whatever. The interesting thing is, if he steals your money, sometimes you can like get the jump on him because he'll like fall asleep at like he'll be like sleeping in a park and you're like, ooh, I can get the jump on Mr. Shakedown.
Which is also a kind of mini game of its own because you're just sort of like pickpocketing him while he's sleeping, and there's like kind of a sleepy scale, and if he wakes up he's pissed and you're gonna have to fight him.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting as well. So again, even mechanics that would normally be like, oh, so you're just trying to keep me broke so that I have to keep grinding out. Even things like that have an interesting spin to them in this game series. And then just visually, it's very interesting to look at. The city's alive. It's very like well lit. One criticism I will actually give the game is the timing of the game is more so just to fit into the timeline of the series. More so than an aesthetic choice.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Because to be a prequel to the games, it's like, well, it technically has to be set in like 88.
Yeah.
It does not feel like the 80s at all in this game. Other
not
than the
really.
fact that there's like one side character who's like, oh, I have a portable phone and it's this big block.
Yeah, big briefcase
and it's
phone.
hooked to a briefcase.
Yeah.
Other than that, there really isn't any like people don't talk like it's the 80s. There's not 80s slang. There's not 80s music. Like
not really. No.
it feels like it could be taking place today, and it doesn't really change anything. So that was kind of a bummer for me because I very much enjoy like the 80s kind of goofy nostalgia. So that was a little bit of a disappointment, but nothing I couldn't get over.
Tell you one thing I thought I was going to have a problem with that I actually love now in retrospect. So when you start up this game, it's the opening like few cutscenes are like narrated and voice acted in Japanese.
Completely in Japanese, yeah.
And there's English subtitles. And I was like, okay, let me just go into the options so I can get the English voices because I don't want to have to read subtitles the whole time. Oh, no. There's no option for that.
No. It's in Japanese. Deal with it.
Yeah, it's in Japanese. Fucking deal with it. And I was like, ooh, this could be a problem. Now that I've finished this game and I've played other Yakuza, I cannot imagine playing this game with English voices. And I know one of the upcoming games is going to have a fully localized
that's an option, yeah.
with full English voiceover. I think I'm going to go in, disable the English, enable the Japanese. I can't imagine this game because so much of this game is about Japan and Japanese culture and the Yakuza and all that stuff. It feels very appropriate that all of the characters are speaking in Japanese. Like it would, I don't know, there would just be something jarring about listening to it in English, and I can't imagine anyone's voice. The voice acting, like obviously neither you nor me speak Japanese,
right?
But like how good the performances of these voice like the performance comes through, even though you don't. It
transcends language.
It transcends language, absolutely. And Kiryu and Majima's voice actors do such a good job. Actually, all of the voice actors in the game.
No, all the high ups in the crime family.
Oh god, yeah.
There's some really dramatic performances, and it also helps that the graphics are great and they really capture the emotions really well. Yeah. But I agree, like I can't even imagine. And also, if you've ever watched like Asian horror films or anything like that with the English dubs, it's never the same. It's always like,
yeah,
that doesn't sound as good as it probably, or doesn't quite match the performance. So why even bother? I'm trying to think of some other options here. So, yeah, like I said, the game in general is just so much fun to play. The hand-holding in the beginning is a little annoying, but once the world opens up, then it's an absolute blast. I don't really have much to complain about, to be perfectly honest. The storyline is great. The mini-games are well worth the price of admission. And also, because it was a prequel, it didn't seem to ever be at a huge price point. Like, they knew it's a shorter game. It's like, if you play it straight through, it's something like, I want to say it's like 12, 15 hours, something like that. If you play just the story, no side quests, it's a relatively quick game. But it's definitely one where you can make your own fun.
Definitely.
And there's so many goofy characters and weird moments. And then, so you're going through this whole story and you're finding out about Kiryu and Majima. The only real, I think, hard criticisms that we had was the biggest obstacle and the biggest downside of this game, of Yakuza 0, is that it has to act as a prequel.
Okay, what do you mean?
Because when you get to the end of the game and you're fully committed and invested in these characters, there are certain leaps and jumps that the story has to make in order to fit in with what's coming up in the first game.
Do we want to have a spoiler threshold so you can be specific about what you're talking about?
Yeah, probably.
All right. If this game sounds amazing, you should stop listening to us talk about it and go play it. You can skip ahead to our top 5 discussion later in the show.
In the description, we'll put what time the top 5 starts.
Yes. Also, if you've never heard of this game, it's not totally your fault. Sega
that's true. Don't feel bad if this is all news to you.
I was just about to say, this game's amazing. Sega does a terrible job up until recently of marketing this game in the West. It has previously just been like, this is all about Japan and the Yakuza. Let's only localize this and sell it and market it and whatever in Japan, and they've ignored.
And also, I want to be clear about this. You don't have to be a Japanophile to enjoy this game.
No.
That would be like saying, like, you can't enjoy GTA unless you're an Italian stereotype. Like, no, this is just a very fun, interesting game to play, and it's very affordable, especially 0, because they knew it's just a prequel, so it was like, I bought mine for like $30 new. So it's a very affordable game, and you're getting a lot out of it. So
definitely go play that shit right now. This is your spoiler warning. From here on out, we're going to be discussing specific details of the game's story. Probably discussing how the story ends. Yeah. So if you don't want to hear that shit, stop listening.
3, 2, 1. Okay.
Spoilers.
So at the end of the game, Majima has kind of gone through this wacky adventure, and it revolves around this girl who he clearly has feelings for.
Makoto.
This blind woman. And she somehow comes out of the story alive.
Right.
And then the elephant in the room is like, well, in the rest of the series, Majima is batshit crazy.
Right.
How do we get to this point? And then the game doesn't really give a good reason. It's just sort of like he goes, I don't know, man. I feel like I should probably be pretty crazy now. And that's it.
Yeah. The job of... From a narrative standpoint, the job of Yakuza 0 is to introduce these characters, which both Kiryu and Majima are kind of just blank slate Yakuza at the beginning.
Yeah.
They're nobody special. Later on, Kiryu goes on to have this reputation as being this ultimate badass.
Right.
He's the dragon of Dojima, whatever. He is not that at the beginning of the game. He's just a dude in the Yakuza. Same, more or
like
less.
a grunt, basically.
He's a grunt. More or less the same thing with Majima. The narrative lifting that Yakuza 0 has to do is get these characters from introduction to where they, become later in the series. So, you need to show Kiryu being a badass, and you need to show how Majima has this tragic, or whatever. You have to take Majima from blank slate Yakuza, point A, to being batshit fucking insane later in the Yakuza series and just being Kiryu obsessed.
Right.
He's just fucking obsessed with Kiryu and wants to fight him, wants to...
Show that he's better and...
maybe wants to bang him, I don't know.
Be.
He's just Kiryu obsessed. And I think that's a double fail on... there was nothing in the story that convinced...
Their paths don't really cross.
No.
So there's no real reason for him to be obsessed with Kiryu.
They kind of I think Majima gets Kiryu's business card at one point, but then that's not really a jumping off point for Majima to be like, oh my god, I want to know.
Here's the Goku to my Vegeta.
Yeah.
And then number 2, his ending, although very dramatic and very tense, wraps itself up in almost too nice of a package that he's back at square one.
Right.
But then decides, I'm just deciding to ride it out crazy for the last few years. And it's like, all right, Danny DeVito, that's fine, but...
And I think you and I agreed. So, Majima's story, he gets wrapped up in this big plot, but he's sent to assassinate this girl, Makoto. When he shows up, he finds out this girl, she's been through a bunch of trauma. She's
trauma blind.
She's trauma blind, exactly. There's nothing physically wrong with her, but for some reason she's lost her eyesight, and it's just entirely psychological. So instead of assassinating this person, Majima befriends her, and then realizes she's caught up in this huge plot of all the Yakuza...
land grabbing and underhanded deals and all this other
all the
shit.
Yakuza are gunning for this girl, so it becomes Majima's goal, okay, I'm going to protect her, I'm going to get to the bottom of this plot, figure out why there's all these assassins coming after her, and I'm going to protect her, whatever. But at the end of the story, she comes out unscathed. I think it would have been... I think you and I agreed that in order to complete the objective for Majima to be, devolve into this super crazy pants wild card.
Yeah, the most dangerous man in this whole story.
Yeah, because Kiryu gets the reputation, he's the dragon of Dojima, and Majima gets the reputation, he's the mad dog of Shimano, or whatever his family name is. In order to get there, I think Makoto, this person that Majima had sworn to protect and definitely had feelings for, I think she needed to die.
Oh, 100%.
She needed to die.
Because then it's an ultimate failure for Majima, and then that breaks him, and then this is why he can rebuild himself I'll just never feel again, and I'll just be a crazy person, and then I'll run into this again.
And I wanted to see, now that I'm playing a little bit of Yakuza 1, Yakuza Kiwami, which is the remake of Yakuza 1, now that I'm seeing how fucking batshit crazy Majima is in that game, and how just... single-mindedly just Kiryu, just all he wants to do is fight Kiryu. All he wants to do is be around Kiryu. It's just Kiryu.
He wants to fight, fuck, and eat Kiryu. That's basically his 3 master objectives.
That is what he is living for in Yakuza Kiwami.
There's
nothing in that in
that.
Yakuza 0. Just Yakuza Kiwami, Yakuza 1 starts, and then Majima just goes from 0 to 100% Kiryu obsessed with no factor. There's nothing.
And then and we also talked about how the amount of death that Kiryu sees as a character,
should
have made him into Majima.
Yes, 100%.
Like everyone he's ever known, loved, or even shared eye contact with dies because of him in some way.
Yes.
And yet he's just like, oh, that's life. It's a very strange thing. Like, okay, like, why aren't you crazy?
Kiryu should have been the one broken at the end of that story. Yeah.
I was going to say, any specifics that now that we're in the spoiler zone that you want to discuss as, like, favorite moments? Obviously, I can't remember his name. The guy who basically is Majima before Majima with the blood boners and the, wanting to kill people. There's some really insane characters introduced in this game. And then same with cutscenes, like the scene where that character and Majima are going to fight in the club for the first time. And Majima's like, well, I'm the general manager. I'm not fighting anyone in this club. So then the guy calls the cops on himself, like, hey, there's a crazy person here, and he's got a knife, and he's gonna fucking kill everybody. It's real bad, you should tell the owner. Well, now you gotta fight me. Like, okay.
Yeah, like, that is Majima. That is what Majima
There should have been, like, some kind of fusion dance or something like that done to, like,
some reason Majima was inspired by that crazy behavior, no, one of my favorite parts in the story was, like, one of the super dramatic parts where basically there's a hit out on Kiryu, and literally everyone in the entire Japanese Yakuza, the entire clan, everyone wants to kill Kiryu. There's this big hit out on him. He's betrayed the family. Kiryu needs to die, whatever. So his best friend, Nishikiyama, rescues him. And they're like, hey, we gotta get the fuck out of here. Everyone in this city is trying to kill you. So they, like, drive out into the country, and there's this big, intense confrontation where Kiryu's like, did you drive me out here to kill me? Is that what this is? Are you gonna collect the hit on me? And
he's become like a made man.
And he's like, well, go ahead, do it. Like, shoot me in the fucking face. And
very dramatic.
Nishikiyama has this gun pointed at his best friend's face, and Kiryu's like, go ahead, pull the trigger, bitch.
Yeah.
And he can't do it. He's like, I'm sorry, I just can't. Like, you're my friend, whatever. So then, I don't know, that was one of my favorite, like, oh my god, this is intense as fuck.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up Kiwami, because although there are some downfalls in terms of storytelling and connecting Zero to the rest of the series, especially with Majima, what it does do very well is give a lot of backstory to characters who do play a part in the first game, but maybe don't get as much time to shine. And Nishiki is one of them. Like, he's supposed to be Kiryu's best friend, and you gather that to a certain extent in Kiwami 1. But because of the ups and downs of Zero, and that scene that you pointed out, you really have a feel for him, so that, you know, when his character turns later on in 1, it carries so much more weight as you as a player, not just as an audience member. They're like, well, we're telling you they're very good friends, and this is upsetting Kiryu.
No, you've seen them be good friends.
You've experienced it yourself, so that's hurting you just as much as Kiryu.
You've seen that scene in Zero where Nishiki, like, had every reason in the world to pull that trigger, but just couldn't do it because he loved Kiryu too much. So you're right. When he has that tragic downfall, it's like, oh no, it's that much more tragic.
It plays such a bigger role. And then same thing with you basically interact with the head of the whole family, the whole clan, and he plays a small role in the first game and gets killed off. And I watched that in the first one and was like, this has no weight to it. If this was the first game you were playing,
you're like, okay, some guy died, whatever.
Okay, so the boss died, fine, whatever. But after playing and seeing all the ups and downs and like, oh, he kind of went to bat for you a couple times, but then he didn't because he's a son of a bitch. Like, again, you as a player have the weight and the exposition going in, so that when it does happen, you're like, oh my god,
the head of the family
you're
is dead.
getting the result that they wanted, but can't accomplish with just like, take our word for it, he's very important. Like, it doesn't carry the same weight. So the other thing, let's talk about some of these specific mini games, and I guess our top mini games in general? Is this?
That's what I was planning on doing. Just top.
We could have gone just what are the best mini games in Yakuza, because holy shit. But we wanted to kind of branch out a little bit. But I think we should start with the mini games of Yakuza.
Okay.
Just to kind of keep the things going here. So the first one I'm going to mention is the one from Zero, which is the Cabaret Club.
Yes.
You brought it up earlier.
Yes. So. the narrative justification for this is Majima. It's kind of sort of a front for his Yakuza business. He runs this cabaret club.
Right.
But there's a mini game where you can actually manage the club, like manage.
Yeah, it's supposed to just basically. You're exactly right. It's just supposed to be a cover. It's
Yeah.
like whatever. It's just sort of like window dressing for this like actual seedy business.
Yeah.
But the game's also like, or you can just ignore the seedy business and just help run the Dunder Mifflin of this fucking cabaret club.
Really
like,
take this cabaret club absolutely seriously.
And it has its own set of characters and
yes,
and all and ins and outs and storytelling and things like that. It's not just a time waster, because there are some, like, you can do like claw machines in arcade games, or you can play emulators of old Sega games in the arcades, and those are just time wasters. There's not really like a full, like, we've put thought into this. It's just sort of like, oh, this is fun. But Cabaret Club, the real estate deal, there are some in-depth stories and characters here that, you know, for people who are like, what do you mean I have these side quests? Like, no, you don't understand. The side quest is worth the money, baby. Like, the story's fine.
Yeah.
But this is where you're getting your enjoyment, you're getting your money's worth. So yeah, basically, the Cabaret Club is incredibly addicting as a gameplay mechanic, because it basically takes all the fundamentals of like the most popular like mobile games on your phone. It's basically like a glorified Diner Dash, if you've ever played that. You basically have like 6 different tables, and you're in charge of managing their assets, the talent, you know, finding the right combinations, because clients will come in and they basically want to just have these conversations with these good-looking women. And so that's basically what the Cabaret Club works. So you have a roster of women, and some have specialities, like this one's really good at talking about this, and this one's really good at partying. So if you have a clientele that comes in that wants to party, you combine combinations. But it's also on a timer. There's also battles that happen in terms of there's other cabaret clubs that you're competing with.
Right.
And so it ends up just spiraling into this whole huge thing, which as soon as that unlocked in the game for us, which is about, maybe a third of the way in, we derailed the entirety of the game. At this point, it was like, I don't give a shit about the family or the clan or like Kiryu's life. I don't give a shit about any of that. And it's right in the middle where it's like, oh, Majima's got to go. So I don't care what you got to do. We're handling strippers is what we're doing.
Right.
So
yeah, Majima's got this girl tied up in his basement, whatever, protecting her.
yeah, like, man, I got to figure this shit out. But first, got to go clock in at the club because Lord knows I need this money. And so you can cut. So like I said, it harbors all the gameplay mechanics of like the most addictive mobile game, while also having some customization elements, because your top girls that have the best stats, you can also customize what they're wearing. And the real great thing about Zero is there's no ceiling on how fucking weird you want to make them.
Right.
So we had a whole army of just android-looking women, but the game still treats them like they're the hottest of the hot. So when it's like, oh, I have a special request, I want to see Yuki. It's like, okay, here she comes. She's a nightmare, and the game's still like, ooh la la, like so. There's a lot of really interesting elements there to it, and it's super addicting. And so that is absolutely on my list, not just of like, it's a great Yakuza minigame, just of all time-sucking minigame greatness, that is absolutely
Cabaret Club.
Cabaret Club is 100% on the list. And I know I'm not alone, because they literally shoehorned it into the second game remake because it was so popular.
Now, I got really into the pocket racing minigame.
Yes.
Which is
mini slot car racing.
It's mini slot car racing. So you throughout your journey in Kamurocho, you can find all these different car parts. So you can get like different tires, different bodies, different different engines and gears and frames. And different. Basically, the gist of the minigame is collecting all these parts and trying to match the parts to the course.
Which, that is the most mind-blowing part of that minigame for me, is not the typical racing minigame, where it's like, you gotta race around the track, and is your engine fast enough? It's like, the racing aspect is very minimal. You're just kind of like, it's going on its own.
You're almost watching it, yeah.
It's more based on, can you find the combination that is going to bring you victory?
Right.
And I found that as a very interesting mechanic to introduce into this and not just do the easy route, which is like, it's basically Mario Kart. You get to build your own car.
Because, like you said, it's not just about who has the fastest car. It's not just speed, because there will be some courses like, hey, this course has really tight turns. If your car is too fucking fast,
you fly the fuck off of that thing.
You're gonna fly right off the turn.
Yeah.
Or this one's got jumps, so you have to have, your cart has to have.
It has to be light enough
so that it can
make the jumps.
Yeah. Yep. So it's all about collecting these car parts and matching them to the courses, which also has its own mini game.
Yeah, and storyline and emotions and character. Yeah, it's a very, very interesting. So that one's hilarious.
That was my favorite.
Excellent. Another mini game I wanted to mention is not actually in Yakuza 0. Oh. It's in 1.
Kiwami 1, yeah.
Or no, I'm sorry, it's in Kiwami 2.
Okay.
Majima Construction.
Oh,
which is basically a tower defense game where you have certain assets that you're trying to protect, and you have these different, I guess you'd say like soldiers in the field, but they're all characters in the game. So your main one is Majima, and so he's got like crazy stats and he can like kill a bunch of people, and so you're just sort of building up your armies essentially and reinforcements, and it's sending wave after wave of enemy, and you have to protect it and all that, and there's different power-ups. So again, it's basically the mobile game that we didn't cover in Cabaret Club. Here's the way to cover that one. It's your tower defense basic game, and so that's fun. And really, again, it's the window dressing is what really makes that, because a tower defense game is a tower defense game, like whatever. But it's Majima Construction. It's his construction company. So, he refuses to wear a shirt. He's only shirtless with a hard hat on, which is just an amazing visual already. And then B, every time you win a round, you make it through the waves, it does a little cutscene of whatever your team was, all standing proudly, singing the Majima Construction theme song, while Majima just slam dances in front of them. And so it's a very great reward system in that front of yes, I could watch that 1,000 times. Thank you, game. I'll play it again. So that was another winner for me in the minigames field.
Do we want to transition into talking about our top 5 minigames?
Well, those are 2. That was literally 2 of my top 5.
Okay. So you were already counting. That was 5 and 4?
That was 5 and 4, yeah.
All right, so I'm going to start with my 5.
Well, can I do an honorable mention?
Okay, yes.
Since we're still on the topic of Yakuza.
Yeah.
The telephone talk in Yakuza 0. So they talk about in the late 80s that there's telephone clubs, which is basically phone sex places, but you're supposedly connecting with other live people, and the idea is to hopefully meet up and hook up at some point.
Okay.
However, how the game treats it is it's basically a Mad Lib.
Yeah.
With all the choices around, just sort of floating around the screen, and you have to pick and shoot what you want to say. But of course, to add the difficulty level, the best answers are the smallest targets, and the real dumb and awful answers are gigantic. So when you're talking to, quote-unquote, a cute girl, and you want to ask her what color hair she has, and instead it's what do your farts smell like? Is the big target that's going around. You're like, no. It's so intense for being such a silly concept of don't ask her if she's a man. That's just
why do you sound like you have a very manly voice?
Yeah, it's no, I didn't want to say that. It's a very silly concept of it's like a flirty kind of simulator game. But let's turn it on its ear in terms of you better not pick something stupid to say. Oh no! That I thought was a hilarious kind of idea as well. And then of course window dressing again. When Kiryu picks up the phone, it's a very dramatic reveal of it as he answers and all that.
Oh yeah, no, I love. Yeah, right now go YouTube that
the telephone club
minigame and just watch Kiryu answer the phone. It's an amazing cutscene.
So 5 and 4 for me were Cabaret Club, and now is this in order of importance or just a top 5? Well, fucking Cabaret Club might be my number 1 then.
So, okay, well, all right.
So whatever. I'll be out of order. You go yours in order.
We'll do this in no particular order. Okay, or you can be in no particular order. I'll be.
Yeah, you be in order because I feel like you have a lot of thought.
Speaking of roster management games, my number 5 is in Final Fantasy X, the Blitzball. Which, now I know a lot of people fucking
rolling their eyes right now.
Rolling their eyes super hard at Blitzball. I know it's broken. I know it's really shitty. I just love the idea of managing this sports team which I've weirdly, like, I know that it's its own subgenre of games on, like, Steam.
Right.
There's all these, like, soccer management.
Yeah.
I've never got into that shit, but I love the idea of, like, managing my Blitzball roster and, like, leveling up these characters.
Here's the thing, I feel like you haven't gotten into that subgenre because you know you're gonna love that subgenre.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna be like, oh, what's my top fucking 2 games? Number 1, Final Fantasy VII. Number 2, like, Cricket Simulator Management 2017. Thank you very much. Like, that's gonna be your new thing.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely, because I don't even think Blitzball is that good of a... It just scratches that, like, itch of, like, yes, let me be
asset management kind of thing.
Yeah, let me be this roster managing thing, which is also what makes the Cabaret Club so good.
Right. So, interestingly enough, you mentioning Final Fantasy, I kind of cheated a little bit on this. I really grew to love the Chocobo Racing, and just kind of the Gold Saucer games in general. And
Fuck yes.
That was a huge thing. And, you know, it's one of those ideas, and Yakuza kind of does the same thing in terms of, like, well, if you really wanted to get... If you wanted to get the absolute best summon in 7, you had to have a gold chocobo. And to do that, you got to jump through these hoops and do all this. And Yakuza kind of does the same thing. It's like, well, if you want to unlock these, like, other fight styles, which are absolutely buck wild, you have to complete Cabaret Club, and I think the Real Estate
Kiryu, yeah.
You have to complete those, and then you'll unlock these things. And so it's a very interesting mechanic to introduce as a game developer of, like, well, we know that these games are fun, but how do we convince people to come play them if this isn't their thing?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you hold this basically behind, you know, this wall of, like, well, you'll get this cool thing if you do this, and then you play it and you go, wow, this is actually a lot of fun. And that's kind of what I felt with the Chocobo breeding.
Okay.
Was like, it was sort of a necessary thing.
Uh-huh.
And then if I remember correctly, it's been so long since I've played, that, like, it introduces it as sort of like you have to do it to a certain point.
Yes, yeah. There's
to get through the desert. And,
To escape the prison, you have to do a chocobo race. Yeah.
Right, and then also, like, there's a tiny bit of chocobo breeding that's somewhat needed to get across the one desert with the.
Well, yeah, you have to. It teaches you have to, like, catch a chocobo.
That's it. Yeah. So it kind of, like, introduces it a little bit in the story, but then it's like, there's a lot of other stuff you want to do, but you don't have to. But I grew to absolutely love it. And then the Gold Saucer games were fun, too. Like, those were always a blast.
Fucking love all of those. I fucking love the fucking sword on the motorcycle game, the submarine game. I played the fucking shit out of the snowboarding game.
Well, also there was I don't know what it was originally called, but it was like the dungeon one where, like, you had to fight.
Yes.
And that was where they introduced the tonberries. And nothing would scare the shit out of you as a 13-year-old more than seeing just that thing spawn. And then you're like, oh my god! And you're just, like, throwing everything you can at it.
Slowly walking towards you.
Yeah, it's just to kind of poke you and then instant death.
Now, my number 4 is something I played very recently.
Okay.
In Kingdom Hearts 3.
Oh, Lord.
The gummy ship is all I cared about in that game. That is all I needed.
Excellent.
So the gummy ship is basically the narrative conceit is that to travel to all these different Disney worlds, Sora and his friends have to construct basically these Lego ships that magically fly to all these different Disney worlds. Fuck the Disney worlds. I just want to fly my spaceships around. It has a full 3D model editor where you can actually you build out your spaceship, and it has all these different stats, so you can equip it with armor or different weapons or whatever, and then you when you're flying in between these Disney worlds, and this is actually new in Kingdom Hearts 3, is it's more like open world. So you have like full control of your ship, whereas in previous Kingdom Hearts games it was more of like a constant scrolling shoot 'em up.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
This is more free roaming. So like not only can you like get in battles with other you can get in battles with like other boss style ships. You can like do those constant scrolling shoot 'em up things, but also it's just this big free roaming environment. So
they just put more effort in, basically.
Yeah. There's more treasures to find and shit, but I could just build spaceships and customize spaceship. That scratches my spaceship building.
Your architecture.
If there was a game that had like build your spaceship and then customize a roster of astronauts or something, some shit like that.
Get on it, Lucas. What are we doing here? Make it Imperial and be able to throw Grand Moff Tarkin on there, and there you go.
That's my fucking game right there.
It's the dream, most boring game I think I could ever conceive of.
Kingdom Hearts Gummy Ship.
Go with your the next one, since I was
going to say we got off there.
Yeah, I went ahead.
All right, so next on my list, my number 3, in there's a lot of card games, mini games. Nothing got me more excited than The Witcher 3 and its customizable card game, or I guess collectible card game, Gwent, which actually has a full physical release.
Oh boy!
They actually printed the actual in-game Gwent cards. There's a physical release of Gwent, which I have. It's good. It's kind of an archetypical card game where you have an army of dudes and you're trying to kill the other person's army of dudes before they kill your army of dudes.
Right.
It's nothing special in that regard, but there's a lot of strategy in choosing your units, building your deck. There's different units can target different rows. You have 3 different rows where you can place your units. Anyway, there's a good amount of strategy in it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Gwent.
So for my next one,
yeah,
which I think is 2 theoretically for me.
Sure.
Again, I cheated again.
Okay.
The bonus stage, the Emerald bonus stage from Sonic 2, where you're running down the long tube and collecting the rings. I fucking loved that mini game. And then also adjacent to that, if we're really getting specific, the giant slot machine in Casino Night that you could jump into.
Yeah.
I probably played that for an hour at a time. Keep sitting, losing rings, keep going, jump back in. I probably developed a gambling addiction based off of that alone.
Based on Sonic.
And that's not even a mini game. That's just hey, here's some dumb shit to distract you while you run the clock out because you're fucking 10 and you don't know how this game works. But just the bonus level for that particular game was so interesting to me because it was especially when I was first playing it, right when it came out, I was a kid. So having a 2D flat plane platformer suddenly go 3D for the bonus level, that was crazy.
Yeah.
The music was super engaging. It was so exciting and electric. And it was also 2-player because you had Tails behind you.
That's right.
And the thing of it was, if you didn't play it on 2-player, you kind of got fucked because Tails was always a few seconds behind you.
Yeah, he could.
So that would cost you rings, and then if you didn't have a good partner, that would cost you rings because they couldn't keep up.
Right.
But that was just one of those things where, especially in that era and in your 2D platformers, making really engaging bonus stages can sometimes be difficult because even in Crash Bandicoot, some of those bonus levels aren't that much fun, and you're just trudging through them just because you're well, I need all the boxes because I get the gem. Whereas with Sonic, even when they got really tough in that second game, because some of the emeralds, it was just hey, nothing but bombs. It was still so exciting and so bright and colorful and so well made that even though the frustration was there, as soon as you hit that checkpoint, it'd be ding dong, and then it had a little glow above it. You're oh, hit the brakes, go back, I gotta play this. So that was one of the most engaging kind of mini game of its own. And I know that they've. I didn't love the one in 3 as much, where you had the pinball kind of goofiness. I didn't like that one as much.
Yeah.
And I know that they've kind of come back around circle with some of the new releases to kind of try.
I was gonna say, I cannot believe you didn't mention Mean Bean Machine in Sonic.
Again, if I could just cheat and be my favorite mini game is this other full game that I loved as a child, then I would have done that. But I felt guilty being oh hey. You know what my favorite thing is? Playing Galaga in the middle of this other arcade game from another game from a couple years ago. That's not really
counts because you can play Space Harrier inside Yakuza.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That would be that, or off-roading or whatever the hell it is, or Virtua Fighter. It's that's not really a mini game. It's a full game that you're playing in another game.
But what we're talking about is in Sonic Mania. After you play through spoilers for Sonic Mania, I guess after you play through the equivalent of Chemical Plant Zone in Sonic Mania, you just play Mean Bean Machine with Dr. Robotnik.
Yeah, it's sort of your end of the level boss there.
Yeah, instead of fighting a boss, you just play him in Mean Bean Machine. And I think if you get a certain amount of the bonus stages,
you unlock it as a full game to play.
Which I remember when the Nintendo Switch first came out, they were selling Puyo Puyo Tetris.
Yes.
Puyo Puyo Tetris is a standalone. It was if it was $40 or $50. It was a standalone game. But also, when the Switch first came out, Sonic Mania was on the Switch and has Mean Bean Machine unlockable.
Which is basically Puyo Puyo Tetris.
Which is basically Puyo Puyo for half the price. I was well, I'll just get Sonic Mania, which is an amazing game in by itself.
And also, if I really want to play Puyo Puyo, I've got an option.
Exactly, and you can play it 2-player. It's basically
true.
just a full
smart consumerism.
Yeah, that's right, man.
So what is your number 2?
My number 2, I have to pull my notes back up. My number 2, oh yeah, is probably like the first minigame that got like really, really, I don't know. It's the first thing I think of when I think of like a game with a minigame, which is fishing inside of Ocarina of Time.
Very true.
Which, there's a bunch of things I love about that fishing minigame. The first thing is I think it lends the world of Hyrule in Ocarina of Time like a sense of like realism. Like, okay, here's what the residents of Hyrule do when there's downtime. Like, there's this fishing hole where they can just hang out, which also, oh God, if my memory serves correctly, there's like a big, it's right like in the middle of like Lake Hylia, and there's no way, you have to like swim to get to the fishing hole. So I was wondering, does like everyone who wants to go fishing in the fishing hole just has to swim through this lake? And,
Grandpa, get your ass in the swimming gear and let's go.
but it also serves the function, like the same thing as the minigame, the same purpose that the minigames serve in Yakuza, where it's a nice breakup to the like intense pace of the stories. Because like if the narrative is getting like really heavy, it's like, hey, this shit's getting intense. I just want to chill out and do some fishing for a second.
Right, true.
Like it kind of gives you, the player, the ability to control the pace of your like.
It's like if in the middle of Schindler's List, Bob Ross came out and painted a nice
it's like,
picture. You're like, oh, let me just relax for a minute.
This is getting really intense. I need to chill out for a sec. But I love that game generated the same type of fishing stories that actual fishing like does, because like, you know, like there's a reason like, oh, it's a big fish tale, like,
right, yeah,
like I caught a fish this big, like bullshit. No, you fucking didn't.
Right,
that's a fucking lie. Ocarina of Time, the fishing minigame, this is actually real. I'm not making this shit up. You can catch the Hylian loach, which, by the way, you're having you're having 3 reactions to that. You're like, yes, I know. What the fuck is the Hylian loach? You're making this up. Or, I've seen the loach, and there's no fucking way you can catch it, you liar. You can catch it! You can fucking catch the loach! I've caught the loach. So, there's this giant fish that only appears in the fishing pond sometimes.
Okay.
So, like, that's why some people don't even believe this loach exists, because you'd be like, hey, there's this loach in the bottom of the fishing pond. But there's a random chance it's just not even there, so people will go in to check for the loach and be like, bullshit, it's not there.
Right.
Because you can put on...
Hacksaws, hacking.
Yeah, you can put on, like, Link's iron boots and walk along the bed of the lake and, like, see pretty well the, you know, bottom of the lake and, like, nope, bullshit, there's no loach. Yes, it is, it's there. There's a random chance that he'll appear. It's like a 1 in, I don't know, 10 chance or something like that. I don't know, whatever. But then you have to unlock the secret sinking lure in order to catch the loach, which is also its own, like, secret thing.
Rigmarole, yeah.
Yeah, so you have to get the special lure to catch the loach, and, like, the battle with the loach is, like, super intense, because it's, like, pulling you all over the place. Anyway, it's real! You can catch it! I promise! It's a thing! I've caught it! The Hylian loach and Ocarina of Time
The
fishing.
3 reactions. No duh. What are you talking about? And bullshit, no you can't. So that's really any good minigame should have that kind of, you know, reaction. Alright, so my number 1... it really goes not so much, and it kind of goes somewhat in the opposite direction of what we've been talking about.
Okay.
In terms of like a great mini game should be a distraction and should be fun and should be somewhat lighthearted. Mm-hmm. This was the opposite of that for me, but I put so much time into it that I remember more distinct elements of it than the actual game itself that it was buried in. Mm-hmm. And that's the Mercenaries mode in Resident Evil 4.
Yes! Yes!
That was absolutely standout for me.
That almost made my list.
That was so much fun.
Yeah.
And so stressful. And really you got a sense of accomplishment out of it. Because really the name of that game, so basically what it was you got to pick from a series of characters, and you basically had, it was almost like a time trial mode. You had to kill a certain amount of, you know, monsters or what have you to set this high score in different, basically rooms, we'll say, but they were different environments. And so you could unlock other characters if you did particularly well, and But it was basically, very rarely in minigames do I feel that, like, I'm getting better in terms of skill. I always feel like there's just a lot of luck involved in certain minigames. And this one was a lot of skill. Like, you had to get really good in terms of A, knowing the layout, B, knowing the strengths and weaknesses of the character you were picking, like what was the best strategy, where should you go, because it was somewhat open, so you could make mistakes and be like, oh, I took the long way to get around here where all these enemies are. And so I just remember pumping in so many hours into working on that, because I had to unlock Hunk and I had to unlock Wesker, and holy shit, and I don't want to play as Ada because she's slow. Like, there was all this effort put into that.
I had a killer high score with Hunk on the harbor dock.
That's the one I remember most, is the harbor area, because I remember there was like a door to go inside that that a ton of them would blockade again and like keep busting the door open and just like kick the shit out of somebody and slam the door so that they couldn't bum rush you, basically. If you made them open the door, then it bought you a moment to breathe to set up your next move. But yeah, no, Mercenaries for Resident Evil 4 was like absolutely the most paramount. I remember really, really focusing and dedicating that because I wanted to unlock these other characters, and it was just a very interesting, it's basically like, oh, well, we're just going to take the action pow elements of the game and boil it down to like its most tense and most exciting elements. And so I thought they did a great job with that.
Yeah. No, the reason that makes Hunk so great, by the way, here's a little tip. Here's a little strategy tip. Hunk starts out with a ton of ammo because he's got that submachine gun, but he also should silence his cell phone because he's not being very professional on this podcast. But he also has his like quick time action, once he stuns a zombie, he can snap that neck, baby! Snap their neck, which kills them instantly, but more importantly, it's a really fast animation.
Right.
So you're not burning a lot of time. So you can
because Leon had like the German suplex, which took forever.
Yeah.
I don't remember what Krauser's was.
I don't either.
And I want to say Wesker's was like the big power strike.
Yes.
So his took his spread out in a good wide variety, but Hunk's was absolutely the quickest. Yeah. And you could chain them. Like you could snap a neck, stun, snap a neck, stun.
That's exactly what my strategy was. Stun, snap neck, stun, snap neck, stun, snap neck.
Hunk.
Yeah. God, I'm gonna go play some Mercenaries. My number one favorite minigame. You brought this up earlier. Going back to the Final Fantasy series, and the best, my call for the best video game minigame is the Battle Square in Final Fantasy VII.
That's what it was. Okay.
The Battle Square in the Golden Saucer. Here's what makes the Battle Square so great.
Because so many games have like gauntlet runs.
Right.
But this was a whole different thing.
No, so the great thing about the Battle Square was it had like a push your luck mechanic. So it was a series of fights, but after each fight, there was like a roulette wheel that spun that had like just a bunch of bad shit on it. So after each fight, there would be a random thing that would happen to you that was bad. That was like, hey, your health just got cut in half. Hey, your level just got cut in half. We disabled all your magic materia. You're not allowed to use items anymore. Like, you can't attack.
Right.
And these things stacked. So battle after battle. So, you can't attack. Next battle, you can't use magic. Oh, fuck. Like, what am I going to do now? And it just kept stacking and stacking. So there was a push your luck mechanic. So after each battle, it'd be like, hey, you want to keep going or you want to call it quits? Like, this is getting pretty intense. Which is also one of my favorite mistranslations in the original version of Final Fantasy VII. It would be like, do you want to keep going? The two options were yes or off course.
I remember. Yeah, that's right.
I'm going to keep going off course.
Yeah, that was very odd.
But the reason this minigame was so great was one of the weaknesses of like a lot of turn-based battle systems where you have like a customizable roster is you can build, and this is especially true in Final Fantasy VII, you can build one strategy or a couple strategies with characters that can defeat anyone, right? So like you can equip Cloud or somebody else on your roster with the best materia. You can have the auto counter, you can have the magic counter, and you can just make your party so great that like it doesn't matter who you're fighting, you're gonna win. The thing that's great about the Battle Square is that random bullshit.
You could have the absolute best of the best, and that still does not guarantee victory.
Exactly. Like that thing, hey, that great materia you had, disabled now. Like, can you think on your feet? Like, can you develop strategies on the fly to cope with all this bullshit? So it whatever encourages all of these like creative emergent strategies. It's a lot more strategic thinking as opposed to just like memorized button pressing.
So, without delving too far into you as a player,
Yeah.
do you feel like...
Oh, do you think that's just appealing to me?
No, I'm saying
Uh-huh.
the road that I see that goes down, the fact that you were able to sense this at a young age.
Right.
Because when did you play Final Fantasy VII?
Oh god, for the first time I was in like middle school. I
Right.
don't know. Yeah.
So that not only captured your attention, but then you figured out the game of, okay, so this is a think on my feet, build a strategy as it goes sort of mechanic. Do you feel like maybe that, and again, we don't have to delve into this for this episode, but do you feel like maybe that sort of set you on the path of being a better Smash player? Because...
Fighting games is a lot of thinking on your feet, adaptation, yeah.
And strategy.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the fact that you met with this philosophy in this setting, and you rose to that occasion, opened you up to adaptation of
that's...
in other ways. Because, for instance, when I ran into that, I went, fuck this shit, I'm out of here. And that was that.
Okay.
So perhaps the fact that you were able to read into that and rise to the occasion suddenly put that as a tool in your repertoire to go like, oh, I know how to adapt quickly and build a strategy as I go.
Very interesting psychological analysis.
To build the plane as you fly it, yeah.
That's very interesting.
That's another episode. That's another topic for another episode.
I don't know how to answer that. But yeah, the combination of the like think on your feet strategy and the push your luck, hey, do you want to keep going? The shit's getting really bad. Like those two things, like, mwah! Like that's amazing.
Excellent.
Love that shit. Yeah.
Excellent. What a great set of minigames.
Yeah, those are some... Go play those minigames.
Exactly.
So, we usually have a tradition at the end of the show. All of the hosts can endorse or recommend, a movie, a game, some music, an activity, a product, whatever. I'm going to go first. I'm going to recommend some music to you, Zach.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
This is some music I know you've heard before. There's an artist on the internet known as Neil Cicerega.
Okay.
Who does remixes and like...
Well, there's a genre that was really big a couple years ago.
I know you were into this.
That were just mashups.
Yeah, mashups, yeah.
But usually what that is, and the game of it is, oh, hey, I found two songs that share the same BPM.
Yeah.
And now I've put them together.
Which is really easy to... Well,
not really
relatively,
easy, but...
Relatively easy.
It does not necessarily automatically mean like that there is artistic intent. It can be very robotic.
Exactly, yeah.
Neil Cicerega, on the other hand...
Yes.
That same philosophy, but also, hey, here's some weird clips from like Home Improvement that I've put in here, and here's this weird layer cake of noise and music and elements and references
that takes on a life of its own.
Yeah, that tells a story almost.
And well, I love his like. So you said there's like two, like a lot of the mashups, the whatever less creatively ambitious mashups will just take two songs with a similar beat and mash them together. Neil takes two like. Well, some of his songs, he's take like two themes and mash them together. He mashed together the theme to Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, the like ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba, with Love Shack. So it's like this like, but it's like the B-52's Love Shack reimagined as like a horror theme, which is like really interesting. But also he does some of my favorite tracks by him are just called Piss and Shit.
Yeah.
There are two different tracks. One's called Piss and one's called Shit. And he's taken these pop songs, like really ultra catchy, like pop songs. He seems to have an affinity for like late 90s, early 2000s pop, which is probably, he's roughly the same age as us. So probably when he was growing up, what was popular when he was growing up, and mashing them together. So yeah, it's just these pop songs that just mashed together, take on a new life and new meaning of their own.
Never have I had an artist where multiple listens I've caught another weird soundbite or another element.
Yeah. He also has an obsession with Smash Mouth.
Right, which was very popular,
Yeah, one of the most popular mashup things.
And memes, in general.
Yeah. He has a particular obsession with Somebody Once Told Me song by Smash Mouth.
Yeah, All-Star.
To the point where... All-Star, yes, thank you. He has, I think, 3 of these albums out. They're called the Mouth Trilogy. There's one called Mouth Sounds, Mouth Silence, and Mouth Moods was the 3rd one. I think Mouth Silence, every single track on Mouth Silence has either has Smash Mouth's All-Star, or maybe I'm thinking of Mouth Moods. I don't know. Either has, one of these albums either has All-Star like mixed in it somewhere, or there's a reference to it, or there's, in the metadata if you like explore the song.
Well, 2 of them were either the All-Star was in it, or there was like a reference to it or something like that. But then I think it was Silence. There was no All-Star in it at all, because people assumed that he was like pigeonholed. We're like, oh, you can't do it if you're not incorporating
basically his first album was all All-Star.
Yeah, and so he was like, all right, all of these songs will not have any kind of Smash Mouth reference in them, but then like the track order spelled out All-Star and like in the metadata of it, so like
somebody once told me
he's putting so much thought and craziness into this.
There's
so it's an excellent choice.
One of the songs I mentioned earlier, Piss, there is like a beat where it's like, which is somebody once told me in Morse code. I was like, that is amazing.
No, it's really buck wild. Annoyed Grunt is a favorite of mine because that has a definite, like, at the apex of that song, it definitely is like a wall of noise. But there are so many things going on. There's Disturbed, and there's Home Improvement sound bites, and there's in the summertime, and there's so much going on.
There's video game sounds, and like The Simpsons.
So there's so much going
Austin
on.
Powers.
So it's one of those things where like the more you listen to it, the more you're like, was that Yoshi's sound from? So it's so weird.
Also, I'd recommend Smooth, which is a mix of Michael Jackson's Smooth Criminal, Santana's Smooth, and the Bare Naked Ladies. No, it's not 1 week. What's their? Or is it? No, it is 1 week. Smooth is very good. Anyway, what is your?
So I'm going with something. I'm recommending something that I haven't even played yet.
I know what this is, and I'm super excited.
We were watching in preparation of this episode. We were watching some other Yakuza stuff, and so the same development team, sort of, kinda that has made the Yakuza games is now making what they call like a spin-off, but it doesn't really seem like a spin-off narratively. It just seems like a spin-off structurally.
It is a new. It's not Kiryu. It's
a
new
whole
characters.
new game and whole idea,
but still takes place in Kamurocho.
Right, it still has a similar layout to it, I would say. But it's called Judge Eyes in Japan, or Judgment here worldwide. And James, you had pointed out before we recorded, it seems like a much more well-polished. It seems like the next step in evolution to the Yakuza games, but it's like somewhat open world, seems to have a lot of real wacky mini games involved.
I am so excited for the mini games. There's like a VR board game mini game. There's drone racing mini games.
Which drone racing was extra funny because Luna, my wife, and I were at a Buffalo Wild Wings one day, and it was like the middle of the day on like a Saturday, so there was no football
ESPN, right?
And ESPN was playing drone racing, and we were like, oh my god! But by the end of it, they were like, "Do you want your check or not?" And we were like, "Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! I gotta see who wins this." Like, it's so weirdly engaging to watch.
But drone racing seems like the evolution of the pocket racing,
which you already enjoyed,
because it's just customizing drones, which
adjusting your stats and what do you keep it lightweight? Do you have more power? Like that kind of a thing.
Sign me up.
But because it's Sega, there's also a House of the Dead mini game in it. Darts. All kinds of bonkers stuff, and it seems like the story itself is going to be very interesting. So I'm recommending that when that comes out, which is supposedly later this year.
Yeah, Q2, Q3, so sometime in the summer probably.
Yeah, very excited to see that.
Yes.
And then we also talked about so far in the remakes of the Yakuza series. So we've got 0 starting us off, which is obviously our topic today. We've got Kiwami 1, which is a HD remake and reimagining, kind of polished version of Yakuza 1. And then you've got Kiwami 2, which is the same thing for 2. But they've announced that they're not really going through and remaking the rest of the series to catch you up to 6. They're just going to release HD remakes, basically. Which is just going to be, basically the original with some Photoshop on it.
Because I think 3 was a PS3 game already, right?
Yeah, so I'm obviously very excited to see those because now I'm committed to the series.
But
on the in-between, A, who the hell knows when those are going to come out? So
Right.
A, I've got Judgment to look forward to. B, right here and now, I have the Fist of the North Star game to look forward to. Which, side note, I have never, nor will I ever watch an episode of that show because I don't give a shit.
Right.
But the fact that it's Yakuza, same team, same development, same sense of humor, but it's post-apocalyptic Mad Max, I'm in.
Yeah,
I'm 100% in. And we watched some of the mini games on that as well.
We did.
And it also has a cabaret club.
It has a cabaret club.
I'm 100% in.
But also, there's DLC where you can replace Kenshiro, which is the
main
protagonist
character,
of Fist of the North Star, with Kiryu.
There you go.
can just be Kiryu
Boom swish. That's
in the wasteland.
They can do that with any game and I'll fucking buy it. They could be like, no, here you go, it's Choo Choo Rocket, but your ship is fucking Kiryu. I'd be like, day one, I'm buying it.
Super Kiryu Brothers.
I'm in.
Yeah,
I'm in. I'm
Mashima
100%
and Kiryu instead of Mario and Luigi. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm super in.
Hollow
Knight, you want me to pick up that fucking piece of shit again?
Kiryu
Put
Knight.
Kiryu in there.
Yeah.
Have him fight bugs. That's fine with me. See?
Yeah, this is a very Yakuza-heavy episode.
As it should be.
Go play those games, man. They're good. You got anything else?
Just some quick plugs.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm
What projects are you involved in?
Oh, so many.
Plug your favorite projects.
I was going to say, I'm here on behalf as a brand for Fully Gimmicked, which is a merchandise brand. We're also
What kind of merchandise do you have?
primarily wrestling.
Okay.
However, we do dabble in video games, and we're looking to branch that out a little bit more.
Where do I go if I want to check out Fully Gimmick stuff?
Fullygimmick.com
Okay.
is the website. Also, kind of adjacent to that, we have She-Wolf Media on Etsy.
Okay.
All one word. We've actually done some enamel pin releases on that particular website, and I am working on a Yakuza pin to release, which is going to be Kiryu and Majima in their karaoke attire as a giant enamel pin. So we'll be releasing that. I have some video projects as well, but who the hell knows when those are going to come out, so I'm not going to worry about that. But right now, Fully Gimmicked, She-Wolf Media, go check those out. And Mean Stream Machine, of course.
Yes, that's our
on again, off again, Let's Play project.
Our sister YouTube channel.
Yes.
I believe this channel, well, if you're watching this on YouTube, Good Games is subscribed to Mean Stream Machine. So if you need the link, look in the subscriptions tab. It should be there.
And you can hear us screaming.
You can hear both Zach and myself be assholes while we play video games.
Yeah, much less coherent than what you're
Yeah,
hearing
no,
now.
it's
and
just
this was even
us
barely coherent.
screaming and being jackasses. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, those are all my plugs.
All right, good shit. Well then, for the Good Games podcast, I've been James.
I am Zac Romero.
And we'll see you next time. There's a lot of card games, mini games, and so you have like
I remember Final Fantasy VIII was a big one that I remember.
that was what not Tetramaster.
No, I didn't even think it had a real name. It was just sort
No,
of
it
like,
has
hey,
a
it's
name.
some bullshit.
Wait, it is Tetramaster, right? Yes, because
I don't remember.
Final Fantasy IX is quad. No.
Every time you keep bringing up new names, I'm like, oh, they just got worse over time.
I forgot. People are screaming. Like Final Fantasy fans who are listening to this are screaming right now. The one in 8 is. It's not Tetramaster. That's 9.
It's Butthole. It's
the one in 8.
It's Yu-Gi-Oh! Is what it's called in 8.
I have to.
Exodia. It's fucking Blue Eyes White Dragon Squall is what it is.
What the fuck is it called?
I don't know and I don't care.
Yeah, I know you don't care. I care. I have to see this. Triple Triad. God damn.
Triple Triad.
Yeah.
Oh, how no.
Yeah.